Hey, I'm Rachael,
And I'm Amanda, and this is Beyond a Ballot.
powered by DoorDash. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Beyond a Ballot. Thanks for being here with us. I am Rachael Siegel here with Amanda. All right, we haven't done one of these sessions in a little while where we break down the headlines, but there's so many headlines that we had to break them down. Things are going crazy in the world. Don't you feel that?
Yes, I feel
Yes.
that. I think everybody feels that. It's what is happening? Like I keep saying, I'm like, oh, Mark, maybe we should get our Euro passports. Maybe we should, it's like trying to find where's the safe haven going to be.
I know.
It's a little crazy.
I think a lot of people are thinking that. Yeah.
I know. But I think that, and I think that when there's so much uncertainty, we do tend to operate this way where we get shaken or, it provokes anxieties about what's happening. And there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on in our country. There's an Ontario provincial election, which we're going to talk about today.
Yes.
There's an impending federal election, right? There's a new prime minister that's going to be in a chair in just a couple of weeks. So
it's so crazy. We always talk about the federal election being like our Super Bowl, but I feel like this is like 5 Super Bowls all happening at the same time.
I know. Do you think we should call this the Olympics?
This is the Olympics. This is the political Olympics. That's a
political
great
Olympics.
way of
totally.
That's a great way of putting it. And we love our sports analogies. So there we go. All right.
I'm so excited for today's podcast, though.
I'm
so excited.
Well, we've been talking on our other podcast on Ontario Votes every day about these leaders. And today we have 2 of the Ontario leaders. We have Marit Stiles, who is the leader of the opposition, the leader of the NDP, and also Bonnie Crombie, the leader of the Ontario Liberals with us.
Yes.
So we're going to ask them some stuff.
Premier Doug Ford has been, especially this week, he's been accused of being in hiding. Well, seems that he's in hiding.
He was unable to join us.
He declined our invitation to
he
be
was
a part
unable
of this.
to join, but we were hoping he would. We really
were.
But ultimately, we have the 2 opposition leaders, so we're going to ask them some questions and have a good sit down with both of them. But let's dive into our thoughts on the Ontario election, because as a spectator from the West, this election seems like it might go down as one of the most boring elections in Canadian history. Sorry to all the leaders. I know you're working very hard and everyone working on campaigns, but I just find that, for example, the polls have not moved an inch really since the beginning.
They have moved. Yes.
That the Liberals are
polling second.
But they were polling second in the beginning.
Well, they're polling better than they were. And they've closed the gap a little bit between themselves and the Conservatives. The NDP has lost some, has slipped a little. So we've seen some, but I agree. I think that there's a lot of distractions right now, as we alluded to right off the top of this pod. And, people are consumed with the Trump tariffs and issues that we typically find, like top 3 issues that matter to Ontarians. Healthcare is always one of the big 3. Right. It has slipped out of its big 3 spot.
That's crazy.
In favor of Trump tariffs. So there are things that are top of mind right now: cost of living, housing affordability, Trump tariffs, and then further down the line, you find things like healthcare, education. And I think the reason why it's been such a challenge to break through is twofold. One, because Doug Ford has really sort of occupied this space as still acting as the premier. So he's been responding and responsive. And the reason why he called this election the snap election was because his popularity had really soared, right? Leading into it.
Yeah.
And then he took on a bit of a Captain Canada hat, and he was seen to be somebody who was, prepared to take on Donald Trump. And so that still became a primary narrative. And at the same time, you have his those who are opposing this lead, who are contenders in this race, trying to make other issues the wedge issue or the issue of the day. And that has, I think, in many ways, that has failed to really break through.
And that goes to my narrative that this is the most boring election, because really, I mean, good on Doug Ford for playing both premier and candidate at the same time. Like, that's not easy. And he's done a pretty good job of both. But the fact that, you know, we saw Bonnie Crombie come out and wear her hat in front of a hospital day one. And I was thinking, all right, they're going to just hammer on the healthcare stuff. That narrative has gotten a little bit washed away because of Doug Ford being in Washington twice during the campaign. And everybody's so nervous. And Trump has helped him significantly by elongating this deadline in the middle of the campaign. So this deadline on tariffs in the middle of the campaign. So I feel like I'm sitting in the same place we were day one, that Ford tried to make the ballot question about who's best to go toe to toe with Trump. And nobody's been able to permeate that narrative. It's been fascinating.
I agree with that. I think that Bonnie Crombie has a bit of momentum. Again, she's tried to close that gap a bit. I think that she's improved the position of the Ontario Liberal Party, which, remember, heading into this election only had 9 seats. They did not have official party status.
Which is 12 seats in Ontario, which is crazy. That's a lot of seats.
Crazy. I know.
I think that's more than, I think federal is 4.
Yes.
If I'm right. Yeah. Yes. That's a lot of seats.
So she has some work cut out for her, but
the question is that I'm going back to, speaking of 12 seats, what happens if Doug Ford is the only one who gets official party status? Some of the polls are showing that. That would be wild. Then there's no official opposition. It's never happened. But the Conservatives are the ones who, under Doug Ford, who made party status 12 seats. It used to be 8. Right. And so now, what if election night comes and nobody gets that official? Because one of the big issues is splitting the left, right? It's that people don't know who to vote for between Bonnie and Marit. And again, like, that narrative hasn't really come out to say, like, okay, Bonnie is the healthcare candidate and Marit is the housing candidate. It's kind of just Doug Ford and then Marit and Bonnie trying to win votes on the left. So what if that happens? I mean,
this is a bigger discussion, which I'd love to have around this idea of how do these parties continue now that we've sort of unless the Liberals can really occupy that centrist space, which they used to occupy quite fully.
Absolutely.
But right now what we've seen is this, it's almost like a bilateral movement of the parties, so that there is the right and the left, more similar to an American model and similar to some of our provinces, actually.
Yeah.
And the challenge in Ontario and federally is that if the progressives are both the Liberal Party and the NDP, they can split that quote unquote progressive vote. So that's like an enormous challenge, because you lump those numbers together and you got some big numbers, but it doesn't really work that way. Those parties are very different. They stand for different things.
Yes.
They have different values. They're putting different policies in the window, but we somehow meld them at this juncture of every election. And we're like, progressives unite, do not split the vote.
Well, it's the same on the right too, though. Even, talking federally, we often look at like the People's Party and the Conservatives, and people trying to equate those as equals on the right. And it's
but the People's Party doesn't even have a seat. Like,
I know it's true.
Not like a
That's
real.
True. Okay, maybe federal wasn't the right example, but in BC we used to have the BC Liberals, which were the centrists, and then we had the Conservatives, and everyone's saying they're splitting the vote. I mean, they were splitting the vote. That's the thing. Yes, like, it's very hard, especially in a short campaign, to get your message out as to how you differentiate from that next party. But I want to dive into that because it goes into our next topic. Because Mark Carney is kind of doing this on the federal level. There's a lot of Conservatives that have said, Mark Carney is actually more centrist than Justin Trudeau. Maybe he's appealing to some of us. And what we're seeing right now is the polls federally, and I can't believe this was my suggestion for topic today, but they're showing that the lead of the Conservatives, that we're sitting at around 44 points, so they're about 20 points ahead of the Liberals, is now closing, and that in some cases the Liberals and the Conservatives are neck and neck.
Like, what do you think? A complete reversal.
It's a bit of a stunner, yeah.
It's I mean, if you had, we did. I was going to say if you had asked me, but we did. We had this very conversation like 6 weeks ago, not even that long ago,
right?
Where it was felt like a foregone conclusion, which is like for everyone listening, it is not over until it is over. But it really did feel like it was a foregone conclusion. And now it looks like the Liberals are at least in contention.
Yes.
Now, listen, they haven't elected a leader yet.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't taken their message to Canadians yet.
Yes.
But the Conservatives have really found, I think you would agree, that the Conservatives have found themselves a little on their back heel, having to revise their message. And they're really good at messaging, really good at communication. So I don't expect they're going to stay on their back heel. No. That barrage hasn't come yet. And so I think we're kind of in this like really interesting middle space where there is some momentum behind the idea of Carney that it's attracting people who had left the party back to the party. And I can tell you from inside the party, like for party members that I talk to, there's a palpable excitement, which you often described, right? Around Poilievre and how the Conservatives are feeling. And I think we haven't had that in a while.
Yes.
And that's a very motivating feeling.
I keep going back. Like I kept saying, why would Justin Trudeau step down and not just call an election? Which I still, like, as a Canadian, think the right thing to do would have been to call an election. But
like, look at the difference.
Exactly. Like, I did not anticipate this, but I will say one of the questions that I keep getting as a Conservative commentator, like on every media outlet, is like, are the Conservatives panicking? I'm not panicked. I am not panicked at all.
A teensy bit?
And here's why.
Like a teensy bit.
Not at all. The Conservatives are so good at messaging. And if you just take the last 10 years, for example, there were so many opportunities for the Liberal team to come out and really change the narrative. They never did. We had so many situations where we were waiting on the Liberal response, and it just like never came out. And the thing is, it's not like there's a billion people in this country that are working on that team. A lot of them are the same. A lot of them are, have worked for Trudeau. They're now working for Carney. And I think that the Conservatives, in terms of fundraising and messaging, are the strongest party in this country. And I think that there still is an appetite for some stability, the electorate's moving a little bit more right. Obviously, Trump is a challenge to the Conservative message, I think, more than Carney, actually. And I also think that a thing that people don't think about as much is the role of the NDP. Is Carney appealing to those seats? And how does that make the polls look? Because everyone's saying this is, the Conservative gap is shrinking, but I actually think it's the NDPers that are going to Carney and supporting Carney that are making the Liberals come up. So the NDP is going down. The other thing is Carney, we don't really know that much about him. We've never had his proposition, his value prop in this conversation. So it's one thing to win a leadership race amongst your peers. It's another thing to win a general election. And I have faith that Pierre's message will,
I bet
will
you
permeate.
Do.
Yeah, I do.
Things that we are not shocked to hear Rachael say.
Sorry,
she has faith, guys.
That's not my partisan hat, really.
No.
I just think that we're in such a honeymoon phase with now the end of the Trudeau era that Liberals are like alive again and they're excited, and like, of course we're going to see that support
for sure. But what I found interesting, actually, from my point of view, and like, this is an anecdote of a small group of people, so this is not and I really haven't, we should actually have a pollster on to talk about this, but
I should.
The idea that a number of what is often described, and for people across the country who I think have heard this term many times, but sort of like the Bay Street crowd, right? Like the business and
the business elite.
And what I've heard from some of those individuals is that they were parking their vote decidedly with the Conservatives and are coming back because of Carney.
Oh, interesting.
That is not NDP.
That's interesting.
That is a very different, and I think that is interesting because I think the Liberal Party has to attract from the Conservatives. Lost a lot of support to the Conservatives. You cannot really compete in the next election unless you can invite those individuals back, and to your point, give them a value proposition that they can get behind.
Yeah.
So you're right. Untested. We haven't been able to see that. But I will say this before we have to really move on to people who have a lot more to say. Maybe not a lot more, but maybe a lot more meaningful things to say, given that they're running to lead the province.
Yes.
Is that the Conservatives are excellent communicators, which I have said repeatedly for the last 2 years, especially under Poilievre. When your main message has been focused on two things, all of the blame is shouldered by Justin Trudeau. It was like a Trudeau must go campaign. Second to that was a message of brokenness. The country is broken. Everything is broken. And actually, I'm going to add a third. And then the third was really around the carbon tax.
Yes, of course.
You have eliminated two of those variables from the very core of your messaging soundtrack. So it can no longer be about Trudeau, and it can no longer be about the carbon tax. When you eliminate those two things, and what is left behind is that you've still been the person who has told Canadians over and over again that this country is like, it's broken. And I think that what the problem that the Conservatives are facing that's bigger than policy is vision. Because right now, Canadians want to feel that the country is strong, that the country can compete, that the country can stand up against Donald Trump, that when we win, the game against the US and it feels, and we're all celebrating, it's like this unity of epic proportions. There is a need and a desire to both fuel that hope for Canada, but also I think to kind of quell some of those anxieties. And I don't know if Poilievre's message over 2 years about brokenness is going to resonate at a time when people really want to feel whole.
I'm just going to do a quick counter there and say there are a lot of people that are still lining up for food banks. There are a lot of people that cannot afford homes. They can't feed their kids. Yes. And that is still going to be blamed on the last decade of the Trudeau government. And I think that we are going to see, I don't think that Canada's broken narrative is dead. I think we just need to reframe it. And I think there are a lot of people that are still hoping that Pierre will champion the narrative that's getting lost in all of this because of Donald Trump, that we need to still support those that are suffering from the policies over the last 10 years. But
so on that happy note,
we'll leave it there. I'm sorry.
Let's go.
That was a really sad message.
But I'm okay. We're going to park that. There's going to be lots of time for us to talk about federal politics.
We haven't done this in so long,
I know,
and we need to do it more.
So much to say, but we have but two other women have really so much to say.
We are so thankful to have them. Yes. Okay. We are going to leave it there. We will be right back with Marit Stiles, who is the leader of the Ontario NDP. And now a word from our title sponsor, DoorDash. Just like we go beyond a ballot, DoorDash goes beyond delivery. DoorDash is committed to providing flexibility for Dashers like Nadia, who appreciate the opportunity to be her own boss, earning income on her own schedule while making meaningful time for her family. As a busy mom and entrepreneur, I know the value of flexibility in my work. DoorDash is opening opportunities for so many by providing flexibility in their work.
I'm my own boss, so I could decide when I could go to work and when I want to work. If I want to take an extra hour before I go work, so I can do it. If I want to work an extra hour later to the night because I came late on the platform, I could do it too.
Our first guest is a former school trustee, the former president of the federal NDP, the current leader of Ontario's opposition, and the current leader of Ontario's NDP. Hi, Marit.
Hi, it's great to be here with both of you.
It's so great to be here with you. And I was just reminding you, you and I were on a call together a few years ago, and I asked you, are you going to run for the leadership of the Ontario NDP? And you were so coy. And so I am thrilled that now I'm talking to you in your capacity as leader, and live from your bus as well.
Yes, I am on a bus. I am in a bus in Hamilton.
Good.
Actually.
Well, we are so close to Election Day. I'm sure you're on a bus and so busy. So let's dive in. First of all, how did you get started in this crazy world of politics?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, in university, I ended up studying politics at university, although I was more interested in like international issues. But when I came out of university, my first job, actually, I was so fortunate. I got hired by an MPP from a Northern Ontario town, Timmins, to work for him. And that was really cool. So that was kind of my introduction to political life. And then I did a whole bunch of other things for many years that weren't really working in politics at all. And I never really stayed involved as a volunteer in my riding. I got very, was active in the NDP that way, but I never saw myself running ever until I had kids. And I was really interested I'm very interested in education, although I'm not a teacher or anything. And I wanted to make sure that my kids' experience in school was good, but I also wanted to make sure that other kids had some of the same supports and stuff in the classroom that my kids were getting. Yeah. So I ran to be a school board trustee, and that was my first sort of attempt to stick my toe in the life of a candidate, and I went pretty well. So it's been after that I ran for MPP.
So you're a week out from this, from the finale of this election campaign, which has been such a whirlwind.
Yeah.
And I'm curious if you can give our listeners, what is the state of the union heading into this last week from your perspective?
Well, it's definitely been a pretty wild ride of a campaign because, of course, what we call a snap election.
Yeah.
And last minute, not expected, a year and a half early. So, that means that I think a lot of us in our small campaigns in across the province, have been calling to get things up and running, especially in the winter. You'll see a lot of times in this province kind of half buried in snowbanks.
Totally.
So that challenge. So, I feel like this is a really critical moment in a campaign this last week. I think a lot of people, I wonder if you had this experience, but a lot of people are just waking up to the fact that there's a campaign happening at all, that there's no election happening at all. And they won't really be thinking about who they throw their support to until the final days. So it's really critical moment for me and for our team to connect with as many people as we can and to, put our offers out there, connect with people, hopefully where they're at and the issues that they care about and what our solutions are to those things.
So what are those issues? Like, what is your campaign really rallying around in terms of your messaging, what you think Ontarians need?
Well, I think there's no question that the rising cost of things is very front and center for most people that I'm talking to and listening to across. And that's in every corner of the province, from the big cities to the small towns, Northern Ontario, Southern Ontario, everywhere. And if that can mean things like the cost of groceries, it also applies to the cost of housing, of course, and the lack of affordable options when it comes to housing and affordable rent. That's definitely top of mind for most people. And then, of course, the healthcare crisis in Ontario, which I think is obviously very real. 2.5 million Ontarians don't have a family doctor. We know the state of our emergency rooms and our hospitals. And then I think, people are concerned about the future and our economy with the threats from Donald Trump and the tariffs. But I think it's wrapped up in a lot of their already feeling like insecure in the future of our province.
You mentioned that Trump tariffs, and we've seen the number one issue facing Ontarians is still the cost of living. Number two are the Trump tariffs. And I feel like that issue has dominated this election. If you're paying a lot of attention to it, do you feel that way? Do you feel that it has overshadowed some of the other issues that are important to Ontarians, but that there's been, this massive distraction as we look south of the border?
Sure. I mean, I think it has absolutely dominated a lot of the media's attention too.
Yeah.
And I don't want to underplay it. I think that I was just in Hamilton. I speaking to steelworkers. I do speaking to the auto sector industry. I think that, for a lot of people, that the threat is real. I would say that for many of those folks in those sectors, they're afraid, but they also have been here before. Back in 2018, we had these same tariffs applied to us by Donald Trump and the United States. And so we've been here before. We kind of know what we have to do. So it's on people's minds. But I think I always think of it like what is the straw that breaks the camel's back for people? And right now, there's a lot of straws on the camel's back, right? Healthcare, insecurity, the cost of living, all of those things, not being able to find affordable homes. And so we can't really handle a lot more. But what I've been, sharing with people is this is 7 years after Doug Ford. I mean, the province of Ontario is struggling. People are having a really tough time. But this is after 7 years of this government. So our message is very clearly, we cannot afford another 4 years like this. I think there are a lot of people in Ontario who don't trust Doug Ford to be able to actually deliver the solutions to the problems that they're facing.
So this has been an interesting campaign because Doug Ford really went to the polls saying he needs a mandate to go toe-to-toe with Donald Trump. If you become premier next week, what's your plan for those Trump tariffs and for facing this, former ally, potential opponent over the coming years?
Well, first of all, I don't think the way to deal with Donald Trump is to roll over and, say he's my bestie. I just think that's the wrong approach. I don't think that worked. And I look at what happened in the last couple of weeks, but, Doug Ford went to the United States and the United States stuck us with tariffs. So I don't think it's working. I believe in a strong, united, pan-Canadian approach. I believe that our provincial governments need to work very closely with the federal government. And I also believe we have to look for other allies, other trade partners. And that includes, by the way, reducing some of the internal trade barriers that we have here in Canada. I think we have to address it. So I believe, look, the Americans, the United States is always going to be a really critical partner for us when it comes to trade and the economy. But we need to look beyond these borders. We need to look to other allies, democratic allies in other parts of the world. Donald Trump is going to be trying to pick everybody off one by one. We have friends, we have allies, and we need to be very close to them at this time as well.
I think one of the things that we get asked a lot from our listeners is not quite sure what all the parties exactly stand for. So if you're talking to a bunch of Ontario voters who are listening to this a week out from the election, trying to make that last minute decision, what things do you want them to have top of mind as it relates to you and what you would bring to the role?
Okay. Well, that's a great question. I think it's really important too, because I do believe that for a lot of people, you're looking to, who shares my values is a really important question for a lot of people who are voting right now. Well, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I came from Newfoundland to Ontario about 30 years ago. I was born and raised in Newfoundland. I came here, like I think a lot of people, my generation, because there were more jobs and opportunities in this province. And that's not the Ontario today. I joined the NDP and I became the leader of the NDP because I really believe that we need to bring back some hope to people, that government can change things. And there's things that I relate to that other parties have also introduced. I always use the example of under the previous Liberal government here in Ontario, I really think a full day kindergarten, when they brought that in, was a game changer. It's extremely important. So there's a lot of things that I can take from, other political parties that I think were important moves. But I think that for us generally, we're the party of working people. The NDP has its roots in farmers and in trade unions coming together. We fought for things like preventing the carving up of and the selling off of the Greenbelt by Doug Ford and his friends. That's something I'm really proud of. I think that for me was like one of my greatest accomplishments over the last few years, was pushing the government back on their heels on that one and preventing the Greenbelt from being sold off. I think that's really critical because I believe both in the importance of, us being able to feed ourselves, our food security, our farmlands, and also, that this is and for protecting the environment and climate action. Without question, the NDP is the party of we are the party of working people. We'll bring in strong protections for working people. And we have a plan that includes things like, which I think is interesting. A lot of people, I think we're the only party that's talking about this, but we're going to bring in grocery rebates because we really focus on how we can support lower and middle income people in this really difficult time.
So we have another podcast called Ontario Votes where we talk every day about what all the leaders are doing. So I talk about you every single day on that podcast. And one of the interesting things that I've been finding with your campaign is the fact that you guys decided to do regional platforms. I've never seen that before. And I think it's a really interesting way to break down policies in a province that is so diverse. Can you talk to us a little bit about your decision to do that?
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah. It is. It's you're right. I mean, we are a diverse province in so many respects.
Yeah.
And, I really think it's important to acknowledge that there are different priorities in different regions. So there's definitely a lot that, like we talked about already, that I think people are experiencing in every corner of this province. The healthcare crisis is a great example, because from the, even when I came here 30 years ago, there's certainly been northern communities that struggled to find family doctors to work there, right? But now the crisis is everywhere. And yet still, I think it's important to recognize that the solutions to some of these issues may vary from region to region. And so, for example, in the north, we're talking a lot about highway safety and investing in maintenance of highways, safe highways, training, things like that in the north, because that's just a huge reality of most people's lives. In southwestern Ontario, we're talking a lot about farming. We're talking about farmland. We're also talking a lot about some more deeply about some of the trade issues, just in a different way. But I do think it's really important. And I also say, it's important that everybody knows that we see you for who you are, what you bring to our province, the contribution you make, and that the issues and the solutions for issues in Toronto are not necessarily the same in southwestern Ontario or eastern Ontario or northern Ontario.
I, as a liberal, as you know, we always get to this point of the campaign where I'm like, oh, the countdown's on before someone's going to say the NDP and the Liberals are going to split the progressive vote. And dun, 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 it happened a few days ago. Bonnie Crombie made the pitch. So can you address that? Because it just keeps happening. But
I know. Yeah.
How do you respond to it? What is your take on it? Do you have a counter pitch?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard it certainly lots. And, you look out in the west of Canada and we've seen it kind of shift a little there. It's a little more clear. There's like two options.
Totally.
Obviously other parties. Yeah, Ontario remains kind of getting unique that way right now. And I do understand people's anxiety about that. I think there's a lot of people that want to see change in the province right now. But I do believe that our offers are quite different. And sometimes, like I said, sometimes I feel that it's less. So right now, I do see quite a big difference in the way we're approaching some of the issues. But, absolutely, I'm a real big believer in, I want to earn your vote. I don't want you to feel like you have to settle for this because you have to prevent something else. And I think that's actually one of the reasons why people aren't voting anymore. I think that we need to give people a reason to connect to values and hope and see themselves reflected in the political parties they want to vote for. And so for me, that's like a critical piece of the conversation we have in an election, right? Is you don't have to settle. We should each earn your vote, and that we are offering different visions for Ontario. And I think we are. I know that doesn't help for some people because they still want to have that conversation about the splitting of the vote. And certainly in some ridings, I agree that does play out that way sometimes. But again, I think, when we and I will be very clear here, my focus in this election as well, I should say very clearly, is on flipping blue seats to orange. This is my focus. The NDP, our path to forming government and defeating the Conservatives, is flipping Conservative seats to NDP seats. And so that's where I mean, most of my campaign, that's where I've been. And that's what I'm going to keep doing. And I think that, for me is the aim. I'm running to be premier. I think as far as I'm concerned, Doug Ford quit. Then he called the election. And I'm applying for that job, and I'm applying to be a premier and a government on your side.
So one of the greatest things that I've seen come out of your campaign is your messaging. That video of you talking about being a Newfoundlander, I was chuckling along at that. And so I want to ask you about that messaging. Like, what has been the overall strategy to try and frame for Ontarians who you are and what you can offer them?
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the best exercises I would recommend to anyone who's stepping into perhaps being a candidate at any level is to think a little bit about, why are you doing what you're doing? What is it that drives you forward and wants you to make you want to change things? And for me, it was like the story I told you at the beginning. I came from Newfoundland. I came here for opportunity. Like a lot of people in my generation, I stayed. Have loved the life that we were able to build here, and our kids are now young adults. I want them to have the same opportunity. And that story, I think, is something that a lot of people relate to, whether they were born and raised here and come from, did generations in Ontario or came here from Portugal or South America or wherever, that you have that experience. For me, it's hope and opportunity that I want to bring that's so important. And so talking about where I grew up is really important. And also, to be honest, I'm a Toronto MPP. I have a riding in downtown Toronto, Davenport.
Right. Yep.
Great place. Love it. But, I need people to understand that I also have a background where I do understand what it's like to live in smaller places and places where, frankly, I think of lots of regions in Ontario where they feel often like they're kind of an afterthought, or like Northern Ontario, where there's a sense governments in Ottawa and in Toronto have often taken from them the resources, but not really given a lot back. Telling my story and understanding where I come from really helps to, I think, connect with people. And it's a big part of who I am and why I'm doing what I'm doing.
I love that. We're running out of time. I can't believe
I have a final question.
Oh, you do?
Oh, well, you take it. Okay, go.
Okay, we have to do 2 quick final questions. You go first, Rach.
No, mine's going to be the end. You go.
Okay, fine. We always fight about these final questions. It's fine. It's fine.
I'll try to keep my
I just wanted to ask you. Okay, we'll just do it tight. I just wanted to ask you, sometimes, we're about the message and you see the ad, but like the person, and you gave us a little bit about coming from the East Coast and coming here. But if I'm listening and I'm a mom and I'm busy and I'm working and I really want to know who you are, what matters most to you. Can you give us, this is like a big question and asking for a small answer, but what is something that you want as a takeaway for our listeners, moms who are listening, women who are listening, a lot of women who are business owners and business leaders? What do you want them to know about you?
I want them to know that they can trust me, really believe in the public service of doing what I'm doing right now. I'm not in it to make a lot of money, or I really want to help take care of people in this province. And I think that Ontarians want that too, right? It's tough right now. And I think people are worried about lots of things, including, safety, security, as well as, whether they're going to make rent. How their kids are getting the support they need in schools. And I feel very passionately about some of that, especially making sure that our education system is there for our kids, that public education is strong, the healthcare is strong. But more than anything, like that, you can trust me to put you first. I really do believe in that this is about caring for people. That the best thing that a government can do, and the most basic thing a government can do, is make sure that our people are taken care of.
Well said.
Okay, here's my last question. You next week are elected Premier of Ontario. You go to your first minister's meeting. Who are you hoping is sitting next to you? Who's going to be your best friend in those meetings?
Oh my goodness. I have so many. That is not a fair question. Okay, but I will say this. I have 2 deputy leaders who are both extraordinary people, and I need them by my side. And one is Dolly Begum, who is the MPP for Scarborough Southwest. Extraordinary woman, a great MPP, and really has been fantastic. And the other is Saul Mamakla, who represents a huge swath of Northwestern Ontario. He's First Nations, and his voice has just been, I think, really, again, like a game changer in Parliament. And then I have to put a shout out for Catherine Fife, who is the MPP for Waterloo and our finance critic. And he would be one hell of a finance minister. One hell of a finance.
All right. Mine would be Wob Canoe, just for the record.
Well, I'll say, I do text with Premier Canoe and Premier Eby pretty regularly. And I feel like them having my back and me having theirs would be a very important part of all of it.
Next time you text
amazing.
with Wob, tell him I say hi. I'm his biggest fan on the West Coast.
We really are. We're fans.
We love him.
We're Wob fans.
Yeah, he's an amazing guy.
All right. Well, we'll leave it there. Thank you, Marit Stiles, and best of luck next week as Ontarians go to the polls.
Thank you. Nice to see you both.
Thanks.
Today, we are thrilled to welcome a woman who is no stranger to politics, former member of Parliament, former mayor of Mississauga, current leader of the Ontario Liberals, Bonnie Crombie. Welcome. So excited to have you.
We are.
Thank you, Amanda. And just full disclosure, you and I have known each other many years, and Rachael and I knew each other back in Ottawa days
we
too.
Did,
so
yeah.
it's I feel very comfortable with you girls. So thank you.
Well, we're so happy to have you. It is obviously the busiest time for you. We should tell our listeners that you are doing this pod from your bus. And we were disappointed. We're like, we should have got on the bus.
Yeah, we should have gone on the bus.
It's been a long time. Oh my God. Tell them.
We even have an espresso maker on the bus. Okay? And even a milk frother. This is
perfect.
What?
That's the best.
You can practically live on the bus.
The toilet's a little.
You're like, I don't want to, but I could. We only have you for 20 short minutes, and we have so many 10 million questions. So I'm just gonna dive right in. You've actually done it all. You've done federal politics, you've done municipal politics, you're now provincial, but I think a lot of people want to know, how did you get into politics in the first place?
Oh, that's a great story. So back in high school, the cute boy in class said, "What are you doing this weekend?" So perked up my attention, right? Nothing. Why? How would you like to come drop flyers with me? And I thought, Oh, well, okay, sure. And then I found out that his uncle was a cabinet minister. He was the Minister of Multiculturalism, Dr. Stanley Hajdasz in the Pierre Trudeau government, and they're Polish. And I thought, we're Polish immigrants. My mother and grandparents immigrated to Canada. And I thought, wow, somebody who's Polish, who is also an immigrant, can be a member of the government. And then I started learning about the policies of Pierre Trudeau. And it was a very heady time. Winds of change with Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And, the land is dry. It was so amazing. And so I really got into the policy of it. And I never really stopped. So whereas back then, I didn't see myself in politics. I always helped the local candidate, went through Ontario Liberals, then, policy conventions, etc. But built a business career, had 3 kids. I mean, I had a 20-year business career before I even thought about politics. Stepped back for a couple of years, and so did on the ground. Like I did consulting work, and I sat on local community boards, a lot of volunteerism in the community. So when I was approached to run, not the first time. This time I said no, but I got the right guy for you. It's not so typical of a woman to say, I've got the right man for you.
Yep. Really?
Yep.
But the second time I grabbed it and said, you know what? Right? I'm a community person. I'm a fundraiser. I sit on a lot of boards raising money for charities. I know where the deep pockets are. I'm pretty assertive. And so maybe this is right for me. And my kids were of that age where, okay, it's okay as a mom who's been, a business executive. I've worked in the United States. I've worked in Canada. I've had my own company. My kids are of a certain age. I spent good time with them. They're really successful human beings today, and I'm so proud of them. It's okay to jump in, and I became a member of Parliament. And then I like to say I took the early retirement package back in 2011. I didn't even have a pension, by the way. No pension. But, and then Hazel McCallion approached me about joining her team because one of her counselors had gotten elected federally. And so, I had to think about it a little while. I put my name, was the last person to put my name on a ballot of 27 people.
Wow.
But I got the seat. And then I grew to love it and made a real difference. I mean, I started a business improvement area in Malton that had never been done. I created a shinny hockey league for underprivileged kids. And I did a newsletter just for my business community. I took a strong business approach. And then Hazel called me into her office one day. When the boss calls you and, I heard Hazel wants to see you.
Oh, no.
That long walk down that hallway going, oh, no, what did I do this time? So I get into Hazel's office thinking, Madam Mayor, you wanted to see me? Thinking, what have I done? Oh, my God. And she says, I heard you were thinking about going back to Ottawa. And I said, Madam Mayor, I haven't really quite decided. And I'm thinking, who told her that? And she said, where's the leak? And she said, well, I'm thinking of retiring. And I think you should put your name on the ballot.
Wow.
Wow.
That's how it happens.
Hazel McCallion, that great woman, thinks that I can do her job.
Wow.
I think my head exploded at that moment. Honestly, I thought Hazel McCallion, who we all adore and love and revere, she thinks I can do her job. Right?
What a moment.
Hurricane Hazel.
It really was. Right. And of course, I have very stiff competition, as you well know. Steve Mahoney, who was a cabinet minister, formidable. but a friend. It killed me because he was the first speaker at my first fundraiser.
Oh no!
And
really?
now I know, and he was CEO of the WSIB, and now I'm finding myself running against a person who I respect, love, and he's a friend. But anyways, the winds have changed. Mississaugas love women leaders, female leaders, and they wanted a younger generation, and here I am. And then fast forward to now, to last year, where, I was the one who was challenging the premier. I was chair of the big city mayors and saying that's going to gouge municipalities, or that's not the right program, or I was the one always stepping up. And he was always saying, why can't you be nice to me like the other mayors? And I'm thinking, because I have to speak out. Somebody has to hold you accountable. And I think it was that brought people to me saying, you're the one willing to take him on. You need to do this. And maybe I was the right choice. So hopefully we will see. We got one more week. I don't know what day it is, but I hear it's coming soon.
Yep. You got a few more days here. I want to ask you about your political alignment, because you're a federal Liberal MP, now leader of the Ontario Liberals. What is it about Liberal values that you align so closely with?
I like to say my my business background in 20 years in business, and my municipal training as mayor really helped position me, because I'm very fiscally responsible. I've never run a deficit because municipalities cannot. So when I designed my budget, we had an estimate of the revenue we were going to collect, and so you have the pot of money you can spend. All right, now put it towards the best good for people. How are we going to spend that money wisely to help everyone? And, we used to say in our office, what have we done today to help people? And if we didn't, we better do two things tomorrow. It was all about how to make other people's lives better, improving people's lives. So that's what I focused on. And so, my principles are fiscal responsibility, but socially progressive. I have that need to take care of people and those who are most vulnerable. And, I've had a lot of addiction in my family. I've just come off a speech to the Canadian Club where I shared that my father had been an alcoholic, and my mother left him because alcoholics, let me say that I heard that he was this incredible guy that was the party animal and everybody loved him, and he was so charming and charismatic and people wanted to be around him. But I didn't know that I didn't know him because my mom left him, because alcoholics, when they don't have a stage, they can be mean and nasty. And so my mom left to give me a better life, and we moved in with my grandparents into a rooming house. So we really had very humble beginnings. My grandfather was the janitor of the Globe and Mail, right?
Oh.
For 40 years.
Wow. Yeah. That's amazing.
The first time I walked in there, I broke down into tears. I went in to be interviewed, and I broke down because this is where he worked, like for 40 years. Yeah. The male role model in my life until my mom remarried when I was a preteen, and we moved out to Etobicoke. And I went to high school in Etobicoke, but, I spent that time. And so it's always been that need in me to make sure that people are taken care of, people who have vulnerabilities, whether they're new immigrants or whether people with, healthcare needs or mental illness. I've always had that place in my heart for, we need a strong economy, and that provides growth, and that growth will pay for social programs. But at the same time, we got to make choices, right? That's my training. Make choices that will do the best good for the money you have.
What keeps you up at night? What are you worried about? What's at stake in this election for you?
Wow. Like the direction the province is going. Like, this is a government. I'm sorry, Rachael, I don't know if you're close to them, but like the people who are getting ahead are the insiders. When I look at the way every time the government makes an announcement, when Doug stands up, I'm thinking, all right, who's benefiting this time? Which CEO, which large big box company? Is it Walmart? Is it Staples? Like the fact that he gave, closed on Science Center abruptly, gave $2 billion to Therme Spa at Ontario Place. And by the way, that $2 billion, 2.1 is more than he's putting into healthcare. His healthcare plan was announced on the eve of an election. It was $1.5 billion. Yet the $2 billion was given to Therme. So it's the priorities, and it keeps me up at night that people don't have the basics. How are we supposed to thrive as an economy, as a city, as a country, as a province, if we don't have the basics in place? When we hear about 2.5 million people who don't have a family doctor, money being wasted on expediting, like speeding up the sale of beer and wine that was coming anyways, but it cost $2 billion to do it. That's not what I would do with $2 billion. It's coming next year. Wouldn't give $2 billion to Therme Spa. I wouldn't give away $3 billion in checks. I'd lower taxes so you have more money in your pocket, but to give them back in checks, if people knew that my healthcare plan was $3 billion, what they got in checks, I bet they'd want a family doctor, knowing it would have gone into healthcare. Then that one time, yeah, it feels good to get $200 this month. And then what about next month? Or the tax cuts that we're offering, right? Small business tax cuts, personal income tax cuts, right? Taking the HST of home heating and hydro. That in itself will put $1,150 back in your pocket every year. So give the money back to the people, right? And getting the basics right. I just got off Bloomberg and I made the argument there that it's tough to attract investment because who wants to come to Ontario if, this is a city, a province that you're getting jammed in gridlock. The roads are congested. Your employees can't afford the rent. Forget about buying a house. They can't afford it. And then groceries are so expensive. And then they top it off with they won't find a family doctor. And if they go to the hospital, they could face a 22-hour wait. 22 hours. You could drive to Winnipeg faster.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So this has been...
that's what keeps me up at night. Changing the direction of the province. How do I get us there? Because this is so vitally important to me to, put in place the basics so that our economy can grow and that people are taken care of. With, we see our healthcare system crumbling, our education system crumbling. We need to invest. I want to set up my kids. Rachel, I don't know if you have children. I know Amanda does.
I do.
Set them up for the future.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, I want them to be trained for the jobs of tomorrow. But our school system's crumbling.
Right.
We have overcrowded classrooms. There's no special ed teachers there. Do you know there isn't enough textbooks for every child?
Really?
And no educators don't have a budget for photocopying. Like it's ridiculous,
absurd.
quite frankly. Teachers are using their own money to buy supplies. That's what it's like.
So I want to ask you, because this campaign has been so interesting to me, because Doug Ford has really centered the ballot question on this idea that they need a mandate to govern through the Trump administration. If you become premier next week, what is your strategy to take on Donald Trump and the tariffs?
A couple things about that. And of course, a United Team Canada approach is what's needed. But you know what? If Doug Ford really cared, he wouldn't have supported Donald Trump, the guy who was about to wage a trade war against us and impose punitive tariffs. Let's start there. He wouldn't have called an election right now because we need stability and certainty. And he'd be at his desk working. My view is he's trying to outrun what he knows is coming, which is an RCMP investigation. There isn't a premier across the country that would use this moment to call an election when he should be hard at his work trying to protect our jobs, not just his own job, right? So this started years ago when you needed to have diversified our trading partners and our economy. All the money went into the EV basket. Okay, and great. But I'm not even sure, like today we have a headline that Stellantis is likely pulling out of Brampton and we're in 2,200 jobs lost. I mean, this is really risky. In Mississauga, I built on 4 sectors. So we insulate our economy, right? We had advanced manufacturing, including aerospace, life sciences, which is all the pharma, biotech, biopharma, IT, of course, because we need to. It's the future. And then the financial industries. And that's what works critical. It insulated us. And then dropping interprovincial trade barriers, diversing our trade partners. So you're not relying on the U.S., so you're looking abroad, but you're also looking across the country. Did you know that in 2022, Jason Kenney in Alberta, when he was premier, tried to drop trade barriers and try to negotiate with the other provinces, and Doug Ford was the obstacle? He said no. So in 2022,
I did not know that.
I didn't know that.
In 2022, we could have dropped provincial trade barriers and we wouldn't be in this position, and then of this flood of the U.S. market with Ontario ads. Great. Where was the relationship building before that? what kind of relationships do you have in Washington? Like, we saw they were only meeting with low-level advisors and doing photo ops right in front of the White House. Like, honestly, that's the 7 years that's been wasted and squandered. That should have been built, those relationships, before today.
So Bonnie, you started this election leading the third party. You're currently polling in second. You have momentum. Do you have enough time? And if so, what needs to happen between now and next week?
Amanda, it's a perfect question. You know what I have loved more time? Of course, when Doug Ford has a majority government. We didn't expect him to call an election until June 2026. Like, honestly, back to your previous question, he should be governing because he has a very strong mandate today. But he called the snap election in the middle of winter.
Yeah.
Right.
Gosh.
So time would have been great, but we don't have it. So we're just trying to make the best impact we can. And right now, as you heard, I'm asking for voters to come together.
Yeah.
Like voters to evaluate our plans. And my promise to them is if you want a family doctor, if you want to get the basics right, vote Ontario Liberals. We're the ones who will deliver that. And we need people who have voted for other parties in the past to get behind us. We have the wind in our sails. We have the momentum. Poll released today that we're over 30 now, and he's dropping. He's lower 40s. We're in the 30s, and the other parties are sinking, frankly. So we do have that momentum. Will it be enough? Really hoping so. And so the approach now is to appeal to voters of other parties. It looks like your party's not going to cross the finish line. If you care about having a family doctor, if you care about a tax cut, right? If you want to fix our crumbling schools and get teachers, special ed teachers in our schools, reduce the wait times in hospitals, vote Ontario Liberal. We'll deliver that for you. That's my mission. That's my goal.
My question was going to be, what's your message to voters? But I'm going to ask you instead about your hats. You came out on the first day with that great hat. We're going to see more hats in the next week.
So, because he had the little gimmick with the hat.
Yeah.
Canada is not for sale. Well, Ontario sure is. And the Greenbelt was sure for sale. He carved up the Greenbelt worth $8.3 billion to all his buddies in the development community who put on those big glitzy, ritzy fundraisers for him. So, we just wanted to strike back and say, you know what? It's not really about that. It's about doctors. It's about healthcare. It was a one-time kind of a headline getter, so we don't have little gimmicks all the time. But you know what? I wanted to fight back, because that was kind of effective. I thought, a little hat, sure. But wrong message. Wrong message. Canada's not for sale because we know that Greenbelt was.
I have to ask you one question, then I'll give it to Amanda to wrap here. The debate. There was a lot of questions about your performance after the debate. How do you feel that you did on debate night?
I wish I hadn't brought my notes in. When I walked in there, I was so overconfident. I was so confident, and I made us stand around and wait to prep for about 30 minutes, and we're all looking at each other, not knowing where to look.
Yeah.
And then once their notes are in front, I know that stuff inside out. I've done so many interviews, and once you have your notes in front, you kind of look down too much, and I shouldn't have. And there were so that was my one critique. I say I maybe started not as strong as I ended. And then I wanted to get so much more in, but you have such limited time to get your message in. And, the other leader got the question about the Greenbelt. I wish I had that because I wanted to go to battle on that, and then I got the fantasy tunnel, which was perfect for me. But then I didn't even get a chance because we ran out of time to give my 1 minute on climate change. When I got the rebuttal, because he mentioned my name, I talked about there's really no carbon tax. People are struggling. They want no more taxes. There's no carbon tax. He made that up. It's fake. It's false news. What else can I say? When he attacked my record, I was not gonna let him get away with it. I just wasn't. I've seen his videos where he stood in the legislature, heaped praise on me as the mayor who brought in all this business and set Mississauga up for growth, just like her mentor, Hazel McCallion. I'm not letting you get away with this now, rewriting history, what was like. So, there was a bit of that happening. And then I wanted to get in the message that he and I are fundamentally different people, despite how he tried to portray me in his ads. It's not who I am. I had a very humble beginning. In this rooming house, we didn't have a car. We didn't have vacations.
Wow.
I didn't know people owned cottages. We rented one once to go to the lake. I didn't know people owned them. Which I didn't. We took a streetcar, right?
Yeah.
It was very simple. We never went out for dinner. My grandmother cooked. She cooked for everybody, and that's what I knew. Like, sometimes you go out for a big fancy dinner to reward your kids. My reward was an ice cream sundae with a cherry on top.
That's a good one.
That was my reward as a kid, right? Nothing wrong with that.
Exactly.
Those were my values.
Yeah,
It was hard work, education, because that was the formula for success.
And it paid
but
off.
It's not anymore. But it did for me.
Yeah.
And
it
like
did for
he
you.
tried to attack me. And I said, look, buddy, I earned everything I have. I worked hard. And maybe I've been successful because I worked at it, because my parents set me up. They said a good education, work hard. I had those values of hard work, right? And, when he tried to portray me as somebody I'm not, that really irked me, because I wanted people to know that wasn't me. And so I shared a little bit of that. And then I shared some of my upbringing that, my mom had to leave my dad. They were the most, it couple. I heard they were the it couple at the time. Yeah. But unfortunately, we didn't know how to deal with mental health and addiction. It was stigmatizing. In fact, my mom and I have only come to terms with it recently, and she's only allowed me to start talking about it recently. We were ashamed that happened to us. So we've come a long way labeling things for what they are. We know that this is a mental illness and it's addiction. It's called addiction. And there are cures. They're called treatment. And we got to get people into treatment, but we have to make it available to them. There are people who want treatment, and it's either costly or not available for years. So when you have an addict who wants to go into treatment, it better be available for them, not in 2 years. Like we have a few of the free treatment centers, and most families can't afford those private fancy ones that, the Premier's brother went to up in Muskoka, honestly.
Exactly.
So
Bonnie Crombie, we've taken way too much of your time. Her bus is
really
actually moving now. I can see the campaign bus actually moving. She's on the go.
But to all the moms and kids,
listen,
you've been having women in leadership.
Totally. You have been thrilling to watch on this campaign trail. My personal favorite moment was when you told the Premier to grow a set of balls. And
are you going to do the push-ups?
It was honestly, it was one of those moments where you're like, you know what? It's the thing that we all want to say. And she said it. Thank God she said it.
Well, thank you.
But
if I could talk about my dad's mental illness and addiction, now I could talk about how
you can talk about anything. You wear all the hats. You're a mom, you're a businesswoman, you've led parties and cities, and it's truly been incredible to watch. You have 6 days till the election.
Yep.
And we will 6-7 days till the election, and we will all be watching with bated breath to see how it turns out. And we give you our very best wishes for the last week of the campaign.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening. New episodes air every Friday.
Subscribe on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Instagram and find us at beyondaballot.com.